Welcome to the Millennium Park Partner Stage at the American Writers Festival. I'm Linda Dunleavy, Director of Development at the American Writers Museum, and I'm delighted to introduce today's final program, sponsored by the Chicago Public Library and the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame. Poets Angela Jackson, Johanny Vázquez Paz, and Faisal Mohyuddin are here to read from and discuss their contributions to the forthcoming anthology, Wherever I'm At, an anthology of Chicago poetry. This conversation will be moderated by Carlos Cumpián, and I'm going to have Jennifer come up and say a couple words.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Lezak with the Cultural, Civic, and Literary Engagement Department at Chicago Public Library. And on behalf of everyone at CPL, I'd like to welcome you to this afternoon's event. It's CPL's pleasure to be here today to help celebrate the American Writers Museum's 5th anniversary and the first, but hopefully not last, American Writers Festival. The American Writers Museum has been a great partner to CPL since its opening, and we want to send our congratulations and best wishes to everyone at the museum for the success of building and growing a great place for Chicagoans and visitors from around the world to explore the history, present, and future of the American writer. And what better way to celebrate than with this discussion celebrating another wonderful achievement, the publication of the new anthology, Wherever I'm At, an anthology of Chicago poetry, from our dear friends and partners at the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame. Congratulations to Don and everyone at the Hall of Fame, as well as all the fantastic Chicago poets featured on this wonderful occasion. Thanks for letting CPL be a part of the event and celebrate with you. And now I'm pleased to welcome Don.
Thank you, everybody. I have the last copy of this book, other than the ones that seminary have, because they are not really coming out until June 13th. So we rushed, and Al DiGenova, who has been doing a lot of the major, beautiful work to get this to where it is here, he went to the binder on Friday and got just enough for seminary to have them. So you get them now if you can get them. Otherwise, they're gone for another month, or you can pre-order them online. I am not going to say much because Carlos Cumpián is a maestro. He is a leader of poets and community builder. He is one of our fabulous literary heroes here in Chicago, and I can say that of everybody on this stage, and also just about everybody included in this book. If I were doing the introductions, which I'm not, that's where Linda made her mistake, right? I'll let Carlos do the introduction, and I won't get anybody's name wrong. But if I were doing the introductions, I would start everything with the great Angela Jackson, and so forth, right? Because they truly are. The talent here on this stage tonight and in this anthology is enormous. Carlos himself, a poet, just came out with his 4th collection, Human Cicada, and he's also written a children's book. He's a publisher, and here's Carlos to take it the rest of the way. Thank you, Carlos.
All right, thank you. All right, so it's May. It may snow, it may rain, who knows what it is. It's May. All right. I may not have gotten here. They closed off the street for a minute, and we were supposed to have come down, but there was a demonstration, as there should be, and maybe some violence. I heard someone mumbling. Is that true? They have violence in Chicago? I want to definitely say that the feat of coming out with this anthology of our city's wealth, so many talents, so many talents. Thank you. I'll get closer to the mic. That always helps. We have so many talents assembled in this, gathered in this anthology. People who you may have seen and actually heard, and maybe you only got a chance to read their work but not see them. That's true, that happens. Some people in this anthology were briefly in Chicago, and I say briefly, maybe a decade, maybe a semester. No, but they were here, they were in Chicago. And some are lifelong residents, some have never left, some were born here, but many moved in and moved out. And that's going to be one of our topics. We're going to talk a little bit about why Chicago and how is it that people do come here. And I'll be asking that question to our panel tonight. So some of the people who we have here, of course, Angela Jackson, I want to read her note real quick here. And Faisal, let me say your last name, and you can tell me if I ruined it completely or not. Mohyuddin? Huh? Très bien, monsieur. Okay, I got it. It's not French, it's Pakistani. But, all right, and so we have Johanny Vázquez, who I've known for a while. I have to admit that she is also an editor, and not just a poet, and she's done some terrific editing for, let me talk about her 2018. She won a Paz, P-A-Z, a Paz prize as part of the, for poetry, as the National Poetry Series that was held in Miami and at the book fair there. And for her book, if you have not read it, please read it. You will be amazed. I have been amazed by it. And the book is called I Offer My Heart as a Target. I do have a copy of the book. I was going to pick it up and wave it, but we'll hold off on that. Ofrezco mi corazón ni como una indiana. And this is a great book. Her other publications include Sagrada Familia. She's also published, my eyes are wandering to other people's. She has other books that she's published in Spain, and Streetwise Poems, Poemas Callejeros, back in 2007, one of her big books. And so she did some publishing for the organization I have been with called March Abrazo Press, and she published with Johanny and Brenda Cardenas, co-edited, a terrific collection that sold out like that overnight of all Latina writers, poets in the collection called Between the Heart and the Land. And that was way back in 2001. Anybody who wants to do another all-Latina anthology, I'm pretty sure it's going to sell real well. Okay, so that's some of our word for Johanny Vázquez Paz, who is also getting ready to do a bit of a tour of these United States before she looks over at Europe. So that's going to happen, I hope. We're working on that, right, Wilfredo? Right, we're working on that. And so let me look over at, in fact, did I just see, I'm sorry. And I just saw your note, and it's not marked in my book, but what page will I find your note? So I can just say that real quick here. I do know that, let me do Angela. You're absolutely right. I'm just grasping here. Angela's bio note, if I may, can someone call out what page I'm going to find that on? Let's see. Because this is the first time I've actually held the anthology in my hand. And so, 291, we're right there. Thank you. So, I'm really proud to say, happy to say, and we should all be happy to look and know that we have the Poet Laureate of Illinois, right here, Angela Jackson. She is our 5th Poet Laureate and one of 12 Chicago authors that has been honored within the Chicago Literary Hall of Fame's Fuller Award for Lifetime Achievement. She has published a variety of chapbooks and 4 full volumes of poetry. She is originally from Mississippi, and she was raised on Chicago's South Side. Educated at Northwestern University and the University of Chicago, her collections include Voodoo Love Magic, all the way back to 1974. Bing, that's the magic number, 1974. Let's hear that again. And Dark Legs and Silk Kisses, the Beatitudes of the Spinners. Let me tell you, I've been reading that book. I've been going over that book. And I'm glad I own glasses because I don't know why they decided to print that book in such small, fine print, but it was worth, it's like reading the ingredients of that magic potion that you need to take, and you start reading, and then you discover there's so much going on. And Angela, has also been awarded the Carl Sandburg Award and the Sun-Times Friends of Literature Award. There are many awards in her repertoire of writing. I will say that Angela Jackson has encouraged many people, mentored many people, and brought them to develop their own style of writing. So her collection, More Than Meat and Raiment Poems, was published by Northwestern University just this year in 2022. Is there a copy in the house of that book? Can we see that cover? All right. Yeah, and More Than Meat and Raiment, and here it is with a beautiful collage, and we see Frederick Douglass looking through the window there. All right. Thank you, Angela. So that is our book that I'm going to have to get. That's a new one. And now, where are you located on what page? 298. Okay. And we'll do that. So bear with us, folks. All right. Faisal Mohyuddin is a writer, educator, and visual artist. Yes, he teaches English to high school students. Don't you want to see a saint today? Here's a saint. Okay. I've done it. I'm done. I'm done. My sainthood halo is gone. So, but you still have yours. He is the author of, I love this title, The Displaced Children of Displaced Children. It is a sad concept, but there it is, right? And published in 2018. And also he has a chapbook, The Riddle of Longing, that he did just a year prior to that, 2017. And his work has received the Illinois Arts Council Literary Award, Gwendolyn Brooks Poetry Award. Prairie Schooner has recognized him and acclaimed him. There has been many other people recognizing what he has done. He has appeared in many journals and anthologies. He's been with the Poetry Center, Poetry Magazine. Some of you, of course, can hear some very interesting interviews with him. If you haven't heard some previous interviews with him, they are online. Just type his name in and you will get a chance to hear some of those very interesting interviews. All right, and again, I am Carlos Cumpián. I'm originally from Texas, just like Angela's from the South. I'm from the South. I'm from South Texas. And we came up here, and we came up for the weather. That's why my family decided to come up here. We didn't want to work. We wanted to just enjoy the good weather of Chicago, right? No. And so nobody comes here for the weather. Is that true? That is true. And so we came up here, and I managed to drop out of high school and eventually find myself in college. And from that, I was able to eventually one day become a teacher. So that's all my business stuff. But the other things that I decided after meeting older poets who had girlfriends who said, you know what, if you want a girlfriend, be a poet. Perfect. So I decided to start writing poetry, and the rest is history. So I'm not going to leave it at that. All right. We are on property right here where the Odawa, the Ojibwa, the Potawatomi, these are their indigenous homelands. And this land was placed here, this building was placed here only because of settler colonialism of the United States. That said, I will greet you and at least in one indigenous language, and I will say Tiawi, that is the language of the Mexica, who are my ancestors too. And I will say hello again, greetings, thank you again for being here. And I'm going to go ahead and follow this. If we're ready, can everybody find their poem? Let's get people, if you get your mics ready, let's hear the poem in the anthology that each of these poets have. How's that? Right? Okay. So let's open with Angela. Are you up for that now? Or? Okay. All right. And please mute your cell phones if you can. Unless you're a doctor, then that's another story. All right.
Summer and the City, Chicago then, in memory of Robert Hayden. Summer nights Cool came down, blotting heat like a kiss for colored children. Heat surged as we danced jagged up and down the street, played hide and seek. Last night before, 24 robbers at my door. I got up, let 'em in, hit 'em in the head with a rolling pin. All hid among the leaves of church hedges, we smelled something slow and splendid in our sweat. Our fathers, we knew, worked good jobs that required muscle. Our mothers in day work used elbow grease and unwritten receipts for smothered chicken and gravy, caused white women to envy and delight. Outside, mothers waited for aid checks and the long-gone man. Large women on folding chairs ate chunks of Argo starch. Lean days, sugar sandwiches, ketchup or mayonnaise, missing meat, a vague notion, love, manna. Twilight blessed the blocks, poured from a dark man's mouth like a spout of Joe Louis milk, our champion toast, heralding the greatest arrival, however long the getting there. Slow rocking grandmothers spit out words into small cans held in their hands, their eyes trained on us from deep south porches we never left behind, never left us even after Exodus. Mouths wide open, we drank the evening's pleasure, men, women who loved us more than what we could have known. We were their quick, flashing hope treasures, the memory of us, their milk, their honey.
Angela Jackson, thank you. Johanny.
Buenas noches, good evening. Can you hear me? Is it on? Okay. So I'm also from the South, way south in Puerto Rico. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. And from Puerto Rico, I came to United States to go to university, Indiana State University, Terre Haute, Indiana. And then eventually I came to live in Chicago, and this poem is dedicated to Humboldt Park because I have lived in United States in places like Flint, Michigan, Terre Haute, Indiana, other parts of United States that don't have a Puerto Rican neighborhood. So I do know what it is to be in a place where there is nothing in Spanish, no Spanish TV, no Spanish radio, that I cannot find the coffee I like or the food that I want. So that's the amazing thing of Chicago. I mean, even though it's a segregated city, we all can build our place here and make it grow. And this poem is called A World of Our Own, to the people of Humboldt Park. Between two flags, we built the pass of an island exiled to memories. We put up colonial balconies and replaced the asphalt for paving stones, the parks for plazas, the supermarkets for colmados, American coffee with café yaucano, and hamburgers for steak jibaritos. We changed street names and words in Spanish, from desfile to parada, from patio to yarda, from alfombra to carpeta, from mercado to marqueta, because we are bilingual y podemos mezclarlas. We put flavor in the food, rhythm to the music, murals on the walls, accents on the words, heat to the cold. We open botanicas, cultural centers, galleries, museums, restaurants, and anything else we needed so our children could learn their heritage of waves returned to shore, mixed with the blood of 3 races. We built a world of our own between 2 flags, a neighborhood with well-known faces, familiar aromas, and noises kept company by the rumble of the drum. Our homeland in exile that floats like a desert island in the deep and vast sea of the city of Chicago. What page?
38. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Johanny. Thank you all for being here. So I grew up in the south suburbs of Chicago, in Matson. If you know Matson, it's south of 80 near Homewood Flossmoor, Chicago Heights. That's my kind of childhood home. And my poem is about Ella Fitzgerald, the jazz singer. And so she was from the South. She moved to suburban New York. Her mother had married, had remarried, and her new kind of stepfather's family and home was there. And then she lost her mother at a young age. Mother died in a car accident, and she was very shy growing up, and she learned to sing at church. And I write a lot about my parents and grandparents, those that I knew and didn't know. And music has always been a way of connecting me to my own history and my own past. And so when I learned Ella Fitzgerald's story, I felt this resonance with hers. So this is called Ella Fitzgerald, Entering Chicago by Train, Remembers Her Mother's Voice. And it's in Ella's voice. Mother kept church songs tucked inside her brassiere, warmed by the bursting fullness of her bosom. And like candied wishes, she popped them one after another in her mouth. And despite the shyness we shared like blood and that forgotten history of our ancestors, she sang open the 2 small August mornings of Yonkers while doing the laundry of olive-skinned strangers whose worn undergarments, ferried here from unremembered Italian villages, held the grime and loss of a new life not much better than ours. But her voice, honeyed by the sweet black southern earth, which she'd forsaken for new love and another new beginning, clutched within it a divine light so impossibly rich, it rendered my music wild daydreams delicious, pure enough to pursue like God himself in the dreadful crush of days after the crashing suddenness of her death. Now, after eons of starlit darkness west of New York, as we bend up along the sweep of this city's golden coast, feeling in the sway of this steel body the winds shoving across Lake Michigan, I feel a warm, cleansing trepidation of the new, just as Mother must have felt coming north to see with a child's eyes the perfect beauty of her blackness as it unfolded against a freshly painted sky. Longingly, I see her now, a holy radiance glowing above the big-shouldered metropolis where tomorrow night, against the shimmering rush of Rush Street, I will sing her back to life. And in the crystalline stillness of Mr. Kelly's, climb up to her in heaven on the silver rungs of her favorite songs. Thank you. Thank you.
So what about the Department of Tourism saying, you want to know Chicago? You get to take a poet with you, and they give you a tour via poetry, right? You take a tour around Chicago with a poet. That might be interesting, huh? That's another idea. How many of you have seen, there was a restaurant / club called the 10th Muse in English, La Décima Musa? Some of you, of course, I mean, the Guild Complex people and the After Hours Literary Hounds, all you guys, you all know about that. But if you were to go to Blue Island in 18th Street, you been there? Anybody? Blue Island in 18th Street? All right. You go over there and you go down the road past the Rudy Lozano Library. There was a club there, a restaurant, that we'd have poetry readings at. And they had a very interesting room set up, a community room. It wasn't just for, it was for eating, but it was also used for community organizing. And the women who founded it were teachers. So, of course, they were activist teachers. And La Décima Musa, so this is the poem I included, or what got to have included. If you want to try to follow, it's on you. It's at 222 on page 222. But anyway, dedicated to the founders of the La Décima Musa, Carmen Vázquez and Rosario Rabelia. Okay, it's after hours. Pilsen's Décima Musa's silent restaurant. Its kitchen, oven, and stove now cooled. The empty sink's faucet drips. At 3 a.m., lone passing cars radio hints at music, when in the main room, ghostly realms banter begins. Décima Musa, the 10th Muse, named for the rebellious Mexican Catholic nun Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. A place for community organizing, enjoying food, drinks, music, and dancing, but also stories and poesía, cuentos, and poetry. In the performance room, its wall hosts posters of leaders like Mexico's Raza Cósmica José Vasconcelos, laughs with mystical poet and novelist Rainer Maria Rilke, a bohemian Austrian voice giving advice about the craft to emerging young writers. The two agree Old Man Siqueiros should paint a new mural somewhere on South Loomis that won't intimidate the virgin or tradition-bound taco artists many enjoy, but always annoy local celebrity artist Marcos Raya. In response, David Alfaro Siqueiros furrows his bushy eyebrows and says, "You two philosophers should get your own video channel." And he goes back to reading Chicago's Spanish cultural newspaper, Contratiempo, Benito Juárez asleep in his suit. The other political and literary poster figures like Pablo Neruda, José Martí, that populate the wall refrain from commenting about the Pocho poems heard at the open reading, but instead praise the evening's charming Puerto Rican poet hostess, Ms. Vázquez Paz, who stood at the matte gunmetal mic, so blessed to be the memories that were made better with tequila or just iced tea, never needing a fire extinguisher while a late-night beacon burned for over 28 abriles, for 28 Aprils, for those fine Adelitas y otro rebeldes, swinging bilingually and trembling our collective buzz for la palabra pura at this old port of entry in the city, Simón que sí, but now it's all history. There you go. All right. Thank you. Gracias. We all come at our poetry from the language that oftentimes we were born with and sometimes we had to acquire. Again, I think we could intimate a little bit, or was it clearly stated that Johanny didn't speak English as her first language? Is that true? You spoke Spanish as your first language. Is that true? Right. Still. Right. True. Still. So Johanny, though I've heard plenty of her poems in Spanish.
I wrote it in Spanish.
You write primarily in Spanish.
Yes.
Right. And okay. So you're more comfortable. You have written in English though.
Not a lot. No.
No. Okay. Now we're finding out. Okay.
Actually, it's something they always advise me not to do, but it's a way of me of not being conquered.
Who is the they that tell you not to write in English?
A literary agent. I mean, I live in the United States. I do understand the concept. No.
But you have written a number of books, and so they have all been translated, though, right? All of them?
No.
Okay. Which ones are translated? How many books do you have in total?
4.
And
the first one, the last one. In the third one, I convinced the publisher to add some translations, but not the whole book is translated.
Okay. All right. So you all know that, of course, Spanish is the second language of the United States, right? We all know that. So, but hemispherically, it is pretty much, I think, the largest language, isn't it? Or maybe not. Do you think, is there more English speakers in the Western Hemisphere or Spanish speakers? Who can help me? Google
Spanish.
that. No, don't.
I think it's Spanish.
But I think there's an awful lot of Spanish speakers. There's all kinds of Spanish, all kinds of different variants of Spanish, what dialects, as they say, right? Johanny, you taught at Chicago City Colleges. Is that true?
Yes.
How many years did you do that?
20-some years.
20-something years?
Yes.
And you started when you were 20 years old and you just retired?
Yes, probably.
Okay. All right. So that's great. And what were you teaching?
Spanish.
Por supuesto, español. Ya está. Okay.
So, I really promote bilingualism, and which is something we grew up in Puerto Rico. In Puerto Rico, there's always also these discussions, about the languages and all that they try to impose English but I wish here some people, I'm scared, I think, of other languages in a way that they think that we are a threat to them. And I don't understand that. That learning another language or not speaking the language or something, it's like a crime. Sometimes they see you're a criminal, you live here. But in Puerto Rico, there are a lot of Americans, and none of them learn Spanish.
Okay.
And people are always forced to talk to them in English. And I know, because I was married to an American that lived in Puerto Rico, and he had really good jobs, and he didn't learn Spanish. So why can't everybody learn another language, or more?
Excellent point.
I wish I knew more than 2.
Excellent point. Let's see a show of hands. How many people are bilingual in this room? Speak more than one language? Oh, we got 2, 4, 6, 7. Okay, well, we got some people like, maybe I speak, I speak Chicagoese, I know what a gangway is, hey, Some people in other parts of the country said, I'll be standing in the gangway. What? I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm going through the viaduct. The what? Let's talk to Angela. Angela, when we talk about language, you write, would you say with influence from the South, or do you write influence when you were writing? Do you feel like, what year did you arrive in Chicago? Were you a child? Or, what, you were one? So you have a Chicago vocabulary all through and through. So you really did.
The people on my block were from Mississippi,
There you go.
and a few from Alabama, but mostly Mississippi.
Bring the mic
The
up.
people on my block were from Mississippi, so it was like little Mississippi.
Little Mississippi.
Yeah.
So there were certain references that people just got because they had that background.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you give us an example of anything like that that we might have an idea of?
A mess of greens.
A mess of threes?
Yeah, a mess of greens. You know that you're going to have a pot of greens, you're going to have
Mess
a
of
certain amount of greens that's going to be cooked. It'll be a mess of greens.
Oh, a mess of greens, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, greens, right,
yeah,
all right.
yeah,
How many of you heard that before? Okay,
yeah.
all right. See, that's a new one for me. I don't know that one. We're going to hear some different stuff. Faisal, I suspect that you may have been at a bilingual home as well. Is that
Yeah,
true?
it was a trilingual home, actually.
Trilingual.
So it was. So my parents are from Pakistan. They immigrated in my dad in 1971 to Chicago. My mom in 1976. So it was Punjabi, Urdu, and then English was. I mean, they were very keen on speaking the Pakistani Indian languages at home, knowing that we would pick up. I was the oldest child, and so. So the language, so it was, English was not, even though I was here, like I think it just slowly kind of eased into it as I was getting older. And so, and I feel very fortunate that they made that decision to speak those languages at home because I can understand them to a certain extent and speak in them in a certain extent. And so.
Some of you have relatives that, of course, probably spoke a language other than English, and they used it when they wanted to be sneaky, right? They spoke it, and then they were saying something in Polish or German or whatever it was, and you go, I don't know what they're saying. It's like, that's okay, Dara. Don't worry about it, child. We're just doing this language here, right? And so, but your relatives wanted you to dialogue with them in the home tongue, and you said Urdu and Punjabi. And English, and what else?
I mean, those are the three. I'm sorry.
Those are the three.
I mean, Johanny, you mentioned colonialism. I mean, so people in South Asia have been colonized into learning English, and so that's still the national language. But I think when people want to really talk to each other, it's not in English.
Okay.
And so I think that was part of it as well. Like, how much do we want? I mean, there are so many layers or levels of communication that happen, and different languages access different depths of it. And so these are things I've learned over the course of time.
I have to ask you, do you write have you tried writing in the non-English languages?
I've tried, but I don't have the vocabulary. I mean, I do have to give a shout out to someone in the audience. There is Mr. Uttamjeet Singh there. He's a renowned Punjabi playwright from India, who I just recently met him. He's actually started translating my poems into Punjabi.
Thank you.
And I will say that I'm really honored that you are here for this event. But when I heard the first translation, the recording, and this is like a metaphor, I don't know if I've shared it with Mr. Uttamjeet here, but I feel like the English, even though that's like what I write in, my first like spoken, I mean, I'm a high school English teacher, like that's the language I'm living in constantly, is that whatever the English I'm able to capture is like the gift wrap around the gift or the thing inside, and then the Punjabi is like the language in my DNA and my blood, and I have never had the language to express that. And so when I've heard these translations, I'm like, he has reached into my soul, into my heart, into my history, into my heritage, my DNA, whatever that would be, and put it in this really beautiful language. And so that's what I'm really fascinated about, I mean, your work being translated, and it's an extremely new, I would say, in the last 3 weeks, experience for me, and so it's been very special to have that. So just in terms of how we speak, the different types of languages that we speak. All of us have multiple languages, whether we call it English or not, but I think the variation, the various ways in which we express each other, like a mess of greens, there's something that's being expressed with those words that me using a different English could not express, and so I think that's it's something, again, it's more and more fascinating to me as time goes on.
I love the fact that Angela sang some of her poem. And singing, of course, is another way of heightening our language, is it not? Angela, do you have many poems where you incorporate singing in your poems? Do you do a number of poems where you bring a song into the poem, or you blend a song?
Yeah, I like to do that, but I can't sing.
Well, you did a fair job. I mean, I'm not a real judge of singing or anything like that, but you did sing. And do you? I mean, here we have Faisal talking about a singer, right? And he brings some lyrics into the piece. And do you quote other singers in your poems?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I have a poem, Children of the Blues, where I imitate Little Milton. So, you know, Grits ain't grocery, eggs ain't poultry, and Mona Lisa was a man.
Ooh.
You know, and I do a play on a Nina Simone song. I'm gonna put she says I'm gonna put a spell on you, and I say I'm gonna put an X on you.
Okay.
You know, a little different, but I do weave music in poems.
So I'm going to ask this question of our panel up here. What an influence other than, okay, if you were to think about your writing, and we're a very visual culture, so I mean as a culture, what film, think about this for a second, is there a film, a movie, something you saw that influences your writing at all, if any? Any movie, anything come to mind?
You know, it's funny because I haven't even think about this movie. When I was little in Puerto Rico, I grew up nearby an area that there were a lot of movie theaters.
Okay.
You know, in one poem I compare the avenue to Milwaukee Avenue.
Okay.
Which back in the, you know, or even State Street, in the sense that there were a lot of stores and there were movie theaters, which disappeared because the mall, once they built the first mall, you know, it ruined the area, you know, because people don't go shopping, they all go shopping to the mall. But I used to sometimes go young by myself to the movie theater, and very young, I remember watching Jonathan Livingston Seagull. It was poetry, you know, it was poetry for me. You know, I saw it. Remember, I lived maybe 4 blocks from the beach. I don't know. It was poetry. I was connected already with poetry through my grandfather, and that movie, I don't know. It was poetry.
Okay.
Like, how can I describe? Because I don't know. I wanted to do what the seagull was doing.
You wanted to give word to what you have seen.
Yes, to that feeling
Okay.
of that movie.
Angela, do you have? Is there a film that you
It wasn't as a poet. It was reading Little Women by Louisa Bay Alcott.
Okay.
It was as a writer, and then seeing the film Little Women that I wanted to be a writer. And I think her independence, her devotion to the act of writing fascinated me. And I remember shortly after reading that, I took a trip to Mississippi, and I experienced firsthand that kind of crude racism, you know. And I wrote my friend Bunny that I would write a novel on Southern hospitality. Yeah.
Fascinating.
So.
Did you?
Faisal, is there a? Thank you, Angela. Is there a film?
You just asked a question of Angela.
Did you write the novel?
Did you write?
I've written novels, yeah.
Yeah. But the one about Southern hospitality?
Did you write?
It's in there, yeah.
It's in there, excellent.
It's
Yeah.
in your. The hospitality is in the novel, and the novel is.
Yeah, I have 2 novels. Yeah.
Which one is the one that we would see that?
Both of them, they're connected. Where I
Okay.
Must Go and Roads Where There Are No Roads. They're really one novel,
Okay.
broken apart into
Okay.
two. Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, I mean, like Bollywood is like a huge, just the whole industry. So my dad, I always remember him like singing old film songs. And so I remember as a kid, I like did not like watching these movies. I was like, why is every like other scene a musical number where like the couple is in India in one moment and then in the Swiss Alps in the next moment and then in some beautiful garden in the Far East another moment. But I think the songs of the films were really important to me. The movie that really struck me in terms of writing, so I write a lot about memory and not having access to memory, because a lot of the things that I've been curious about, so family history or national, regional history from India, Pakistan, it was never shared. It was like almost like silenced. And so there's that movie, The Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, of where people are getting their memories erased. And I remember it being like a really haunting movie. It's goofy. It's a really brilliant movie, I think, but that sense of there's been so much active forgetting or the attempt to forget things, and it never is successful. So I always think about the fact that not having been told things made me more hungry to know those things and more curious. And that like curiosity, that hunger has been like the number one impulse that has inspired my writing. And so it's not maybe directly from that movie, but that idea.
So, thank you. We're going to have, that's where I'm going right now. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're going to do that. So, I bet there's somebody here who has a question for our panel. If you do have a question, raise your hand and let's engage them. Gentlemen. Let's bring you a mic. No? You can do it right there.
As you were referring to certain references of poetry of India, I have one question for Faisal, whose poetry he has already told you I have read extensively. No, I have been knowing him just for the last 3-4 weeks only. Faisal, I do understand that when you refer to certain places or certain characters who are far away from here, whether it's Bhagat Singh or Faisalabad as a city or Lahore or other many things, and you get an advantage of being rooted. The content is really very authentic. It gives you strength, and your poetry gets so much of strength. My question to you is, whether it also becomes a limiting factor as far as communication is concerned? One question for, if you can allow me, Johanny. I have gone through certain pages of your life which are in the public domain. I, on behalf of all the sane men of this world, beg for your forgiveness for whatever we have done. I'm ashamed of all that. These few words, this is maximum I can do for you. But then I could not have done less than that also. My question to you is, you had a very difficult past as far as men in your life and in your vicinity are concerned. And since you, in your poetry, I have seen talking to people and yourself also. You talk to your inner voice also. My question is, now, at this age, how do you view men? Please, be frank.
I hit them. It's the real hero is my mother. My mother who was almost killed by my father. And she lost 2 daughters. And she still likes to put makeup and look nice before she goes out of the house at 89 years old. Even though I tell her nobody cares anymore, Mom. It is hard, you know. When I was single, I used to say, I'm not a lesbian, I'm a masochist. I'm a masochist because I like, why do I like men and whatever? But sometimes I always had that thing that I wanted, because of my father had mental problems. I was attracted sometimes to men that I wanted to save. And I wanted to save people. I was a social worker. And I actually thought I never was going to have a really good relationship with a man. And then I got that wonderful man. And it was not easy at the beginning. I think, thinking about this, you know, the whole problem is the way relationships are. For me, there's so much lies. Like, I think, why do we lie? You know, men lie like, I love you, but they want to take you to bed. And then we women are like, oh, you're the first one, because we want them to think we're a saint. I don't know, all this, it's really complicated, the relationships between men and women, you know. But violence is not something new. Sometimes people now, oh, all this violence in Chicago now. People think it's now, the gangs or whatever. And like, are people forgetting about slavery? Are people forgetting all our history, even religious history of wars, of killings, of torture? We come from that. And the only way to stop that is that we have to look at ourselves and say, hey, I need to work on putting those bad things that I have, you know, controlling myself. I don't think we're teaching young people how to deal with problems, how to do things. Before, what they taught us was respect with a belt. You know, I come from that. I don't know how many of you, you know, my mama used to hit me with a belt or la chancleta, you know, which is the flip-flop or something. And that's why you were like, because I was scared of my mom, you know, she just looked at me and I'm like, okay. And now that we cannot do that because they call the CFS themselves, you know, oh, they don't respect, but it's just, we don't teach them also how to do. It's like, I went through all those education classes, but they never taught us how do you deal with students that behave this way or behave that way, or when they say bad words to the teacher or push. I don't know. You know,
Johanny,
it's,
if they taught, how many of you are teachers in this room? Anybody? Who else is a teacher? We've got a few. If they had taught while you were getting your degree about the violent, the capacity for violence on the part of students, I'm sure people wouldn't have even, thank you, no, I'm going to quit now. You know, they're not even going to go all the way to get their degree in education if they had to really contemplate what happens with violence in classroom settings and in society. But your great question and your point about none of this being new. Angela, do you want to add anything or talk about violence? I really know that you have done some magical discussion of violence in your book of poetry with Northwestern University. There are so many magical things in terms of men and women relationships, but the violence is almost like, what do they call, magical realism violence that's happening in the Spinners in your book. But talk about that for a second.
Oh, in the spider poem?
Yes, in the spider poems.
Oh, boy. You know, I was watching Nightline the other night, and there was these explorers, and they were going through, I think it was the Amazon. They were climbing, and an older scientist said, he was in his 80s, and he was talking about spiders, and he said spiders are by nature pernicious, and some spiders eat other spiders. And he said, but some of them are sociable and act in society. So, so it's like there's an inherent violence in that species, and there are some who work together cooperatively, and I think people are like that. But it is my hope that it is more of us who are social and sociable than the pernicious.
I think that's right. And ladies and gentlemen, we're coming up to about the time we need to sign off from this event today. We want to thank you for bringing us together and for all of you being here. I think we're just going to leave it with the ladies. Okay? Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks. Thank you to everybody.